So the syllabus. Quite a big syllabus there, quite a lot to learn, a lot of rote learning, a lot of learning. So we talked about the syllabus. The next thing I want to talk to you about is, when you go into the exam paper, what can you expect to see? What is the exam format? So let's talk about the format of the F6 exam. The first thing I want to say to you is that the F6 exam is 3 hours long, plus you get an extra 15 minutes of reading time. The paper consists of 5 compulsory questions, so that's quite good. No wasting time choosing questions. And the paper is divided into 5 questions, 5 compulsory questions. Questions 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 have got different marks allocated to them, and the examiner has told us more or less what each of the questions is going to be on, which tax they're going to be testing you on. There is an exception to that rule, and that's questions 4 and 5. But as far as question 1 and 2 is concerned, what do we know about those questions? Well, for example, we know that question 1 is going to be on income tax, and we know that question 2 is going to be on corporation tax. So income tax is, remember, the tax paid by individuals on their income, and corporation tax is the tax paid by companies. The examiner has told us that in total these 2 questions added together are going to be for 55 marks. So in total you're going to get 55 marks for these 2 questions. Now, the examiner has told us that one of them will be for 25 marks and one of them will be for 30 marks. So that's what we know. So 2 permutations really, isn't there? So question 1 could be 25, and that would mean that question 2 would be 30. Or alternatively, question 1 could be 30 and question 2 would therefore be 25, making up the total of 55 marks. So that's quite a lot of marks there for questions 1 and 2. So 55 marks. Question number 3 is focusing on chargeable gains, and this one is going to be for 20 marks. 20 marks on that one. It can be from the point of view of a company, or it can be from the point of view of an individual. So, but 20 marks on the topic of capital gains and taxing it. Question 4 and 5. Now, those are the 2 questions that we don't know what they're going to be on. They could be on absolutely anything. What we do know is that one of them is 15 marks and the other one is 10 marks. So question 5 is always 15 and question 5 is always 10. So questions 4 and 5 can be on absolutely anything. They can be on any tax that you care to mention. Frequently they're on income tax and corporation tax and maybe national insurance. That's what they're predominantly on, but they could be on VAT or they could be on capital gains as well. So the only 2 questions that we have this uncertainty regarding what they're going to be on is questions 4 and 5, the smaller questions on the paper. The other thing that we know for sure is that there's going to be at least 10 marks on the paper on the topic of VAT. So always the examiner has said at least 10 marks on VAT. So that's another fact that we know for certain. So a lot of guidance there from the F6 examiner, which is very, very, very helpful. So the exam format, the next thing we're going to look at. The final part of this introduction is how can I help you to pass this exam? I mean, what skills do you need to develop? So let's just talk about the skills that you need to develop in order to pass the F6 exam. So let's look at some of the skills that you're going to need. Now, as I said to you a few minutes ago, this is a rote learning subject. So you need to be able to learn things off by heart. So, using mnemonics and whatever tools that you have in order to help you remember things. So it's a rote learning subject. So one of the essential parts to being able to pass this exam, I've got to say, is to give yourself enough time to learn everything properly. Because if you don't learn everything properly, then you can't pass the exam, because it relies on your ability to learn things off by heart. So you have to learn rules. So you have to learn income tax rules and corporation tax rules and capital gains rules. So you have to learn a lot of rules. A lot of rules have to be learned. So rules. You've got to learn pro formas. So you've got a lot of pro formas. How to calculate capital allowances has got a pro forma, and how to calculate income tax, and how to calculate corporation tax, and how to work out capital gains. And all of these require you to learn pro formas and rules as well. So you've also got to learn how to calculate different taxes. You've got to learn how to calculate income tax and corporation tax and capital gains tax and VAT. As I said to you before, the questions that you're going to see are going to be predominantly computational, although there can be a small written element as well, but a lot of calculations. So number crunching, you need to remember to bring your calculator with you to the exam, otherwise it's going to be very, very difficult. To pass the exam, not only have you got to do a lot of learning, a lot of rote learning, a lot of learning off by heart, but you've got to do a lot of practicing as well. You've got to practice exam questions, and not only have you got to practice them to make sure that you can do them, you've also got to make sure that you can do them fast. So, one of the features of this paper is that you're going to have some degree of time pressure. And therefore, it's very important that not only can you do the questions and get them right, but you can do them quickly. And to do this, you've got to time yourself, sort of start the clock. I've now got 45 minutes to do this 25-mark question. And you start the clock and you stop the clock at the end of the 45 minutes and see how much you've managed to do. And obviously, at the beginning, you're going to be far too slow, but the more that you practice, the faster you're going to get. So practice. And practice some more. Very, very important part of your journey is practicing. So, the introduction to F6, talking about what it's all about, talking about the syllabus that you're going to be studying, and talking about the format of the exam, the fact you've got 5 compulsory questions, and that you've got 3 hours plus this extra 15 minutes of reading time. And then talking about how to pass the exam. Remember, the way to pass the exam is to do lots of learning and lots of practicing, because you're going to face an exam which is going to be computational in style. So, the introduction.